Progressives, this is your trigger warning.
From PJ Media. This is one of the best written opinion pieces I have ever read. And I suggest that you watch this video all the way to the end. It's written by Christopher Skeet on pjmedia.com website. And it's titled, All Black Lives Matter, but some Black Lives Matter more than others. I challenge anyone to a rational discussion, not name calling, a rational discussion to tell me anything this gentleman said in this piece is exaggerated or incorrect. Let's read on. Does the name Trayvon Martin ring a bell? Well, of course it does. That's how all this started. He was the one who attacked George Zimmerman. Remember that one? The white Hispanic of antagonist lore and had been pummeling his head against a sidewalk MMA style before the latter shot him in self-defense. It's amazing how anybody Hispanic that does something is automatically white. Zimmerman had reported his hoodie Don Martin to police after witnessing him casing houses. Martin had previously been caught at school in possession of stolen jewelry and burglar tools and was currently on his third suspension. Remember Michael Brown, the 6'4" man who strong-armed, burglarized a store clerk before violently attacking police officer Darren Wilson and trying to steal his gun. Wilson shot him in justified self-defense. And it is from this altercation that the entirely fictitious hands up, don't shoot twaddle arose. That was a lie. Same with the lie about Zimmerman, because the media pushed that narrative. They never said later when they found out that it was a lie that they corrected themselves, never apologized, never issued a correction. There's a reason for that. Remember Eric Garner, the cigarette hawker who had over 30 prior arrests. Remember Breonna Taylor, who was deeply involved in her boyfriend's drug trade. She was there, I guess, when there was an exchange of fire with police through a doorway. Remember Jacob Blake, the domestic abuser who attacked police with a knife while trying to kidnap his girlfriend's child. Remember Eric Logan, the car burglar who likewise came at police with a knife. Remember Alton Sterling, who fought police before pulling a gun on them. And who could forget George Floyd, who once robbed two women, a child at gunpoint in their home, and whose fentanyl-induced death triggered riots and deaths across the fruited plain. There's no mistake about the fact that there was enough drugs in him to kill him. These incidents were trumpeted by Black Lives Matter and their media as incontestable evidence of systematic anti-black racism. And you're going to see later other blacks that died and the reaction from these same Black Lives Matter. Anti-black racism at the core of America's icy heart. Through a single shred of actual evidence is yet to be presented that these incidents had anything to do with race. If a cop acts out of line and does something wrong, and is the death of a person he's trying to arrest, and the cop is white, and the person that dies is black, they automatically assume racism. That's wrong. The mere fact that the negative altercations arise between members of differing races is nowhere near evidence enough to credibly suspect racism. That is correct. But even if you're on a suspicion, one deduces quickly that these are aforementioned victims are not exactly modern-day Emmett Tills. Nonetheless, these criminals were eulogized as gentle giants. There's grade school pictures were posted. Matriarchal laments were heard about how they always wanted to grow up to be astronauts and brain surgeons. Starbucks employees donned activist T-shirts. Communities came together to grieve and to resist. Voices were amplified. Murals were painted. Streets were renamed. People were empowered, and police were defunded. And also, Black Lives Matter raised over $90 million in 1 year. I should suggest you watch Candace's on the Daily Wire about the fraud from Black Lives Matter. It's I think it's called The Biggest Lie Ever Told. So how's that been working out? Are these criminals truly the inspiration for contemporary Black America? Is someone of George Floyd's character who Black parents want their sons to emulate? If you put up a mural for somebody or rename a street, why wouldn't you want one of your young sons, if you were Black, to emulate them? Well, of course they wouldn't. Nobody in their right mind would. So why is there a mural up? Just because they died? My mom recently passed away. I lost my baby brother and my dad passed a few years ago. So we get to put murals up for them? It's amazing to me. They want their daughters to marry them? You're selling yourself short, my friends. Your forefathers' generation produced Cryptus Attucks, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Beecher Stowe, George Washington Carver, Claudette Colvin, and Martin Luther King. Your generation produced Colin Kaepernick, Lizzo, Brandon Johnson, Nicole Hannah-Jones, Jussie Smollett, Cardi B, and LeBron James. The force from which your forefathers are currently spinning in their graves would generate enough kinetic energy to rotate a planet. President Obama famously could, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Yeah? If you had a son, would he behave like Trayvon? I wouldn't think so. Because his actions, not his race, were the sole determinant in affecting his demise. If it had not been Zimmerman pulling the trigger in that first case, it would have been a rabble drug dealer or gang member, and the world would have never heard of Trayvon Martin. The majority of all our problems, be they divided problems or community problems, are largely our own making. The desire to assign blame to outside conspiratorial forces is understandable. It's easy to do and impossible to prove them wrong. It's like it's in the ether, in the air. Well, prove me wrong. Well, you can't. That's why they do it. It's understandable, but it's counterproductive. It is true that part of the blame for the plight of Black community does fall onto the politicians who have fed them truckloads of lies since the advent of LBJ's Great Society. The Great Society programs in my lifetime from LBJ was disastrous to minorities in this country. That's not even counting the trillions of dollars that were spent. That not only did they not improve the long-term outcome of minorities, but it actually caused more harm than good. It's been proven over and over and over. And people have their fingers in their ears and they don't want to hear it. Much of the blame falls on the community itself, because by now it is beyond obvious that the street corner elixir salesman, when I used to be a city councilman in upstate New York, I used to go on TV and call them unlicensed pharmacists, to whom you've freely given over half a century of voting loyalty, meaning Black people voting for Democrats, have absolutely no intention of allowing you to reprise from your political serfdom. That you keep voting for them in lockstep and without a question is your fault and only your fault. Fool me one election, shame on you. Fool me 50 elections, shame on me. And you're going to see at the end of this video, they're going to list some Blacks that have died and why nothing was said. You speak to these politicians' depravity, they engage in the basis of pandering and racial huskering. But it speaks to the voters' obstinance that they sell their children's futures to line up to hear exactly what they want to hear. And while in the unspoken knowledge that on some fundamental level, they must know it's all inane drivel. To that extent, Black egos matter more than Black lives. And and your white allies who attend and march in your rallies. Their participation is driven solely by an enormous sense of arrogance, narcissism, self-righteousness. To that extent, white egos matter more than Black lives. It also attests to the political reality that whether or not its proponents actually believe that Black Lives Matter, they certainly don't think they matter more than political leverage. And you're going to see the people they're going to list is just a tiny portion of the people that got zero attention from Black Lives Matter or any of the mainstream media, even local media. If Black Lives Matter, the activist class wouldn't be focused on avenging the supposed wrongs done to the drug dealers, domestic abusers, deadbeat dads, in short, the absolute worst offenders plaguing their own communities. Here are some Black lives whose tragic demise garnered absolutely zero protests. Lawsuits, murals, raised fists, renamed streets, federal investigation, or barista propaganda. I remember this gentleman in the rioting in St. Louis. Dorn was a retired St. Louis Police Department, David Dorn. He was a police captain who was murdered while trying to defend a pawn shop from looters. He had spent his 38-year career mentoring young people. I saw the video when he got hit. I believe he got smashed in the head. Dead. Well, David Johnson, and by the way, what was the outcry? Killing a retired police officer, a senior. Guy had to be in his mid-late 60s. Here we got coverage from Black Lives Matter. Zero. Johnson was a special forces operator who had been deployed to Niger to fight an ISIS offshoot group. His undertrained and ill-equipped team were ambushed at the village of Tongo Tongo. Johnson went down fighting heroically against Islamic terrorists. And where his name being upheld, that gave his life to combat terrorism. What you get? You get crickets. Delano Wells Jr. Wells witnessed his younger sister being attacked and beaten by thugs in the hallway of their apartment building. He jumped in to save her and was shot and killed by the attackers. Where's the vigils? Where's the mural that this guy tried to protect his sister, his younger sister? Nothing. Because it doesn't fit their narrative. Militosis Familia. Familia was a police officer who had been sitting in her vehicle when a repeat felon approached and assassinated her, shooting her in the head at point-blank range. She was the mother of 3 children. Where's the outcry? Where's the GoFundMe to help her 3 children? Where's the outrage at the individual that did it? Nothing. And these people are all non-white, by the way. William Rivers, Kennedy Sanders, and Breonna Moffett, I believe it's pronounced. These Americans were 3 soldiers killed last month in a drone attack on our military base in Iran-backed militants. We had troops in Jordan? Who knew? Clearly the Iranians did, even if the American public didn't. If Black Lives mattered, these would be the household names whose lives we celebrate and whose deaths we honor. When some of these people, the military people, were buried at Arlington, where was the Black Lives Matter people to honor their death? They were nowhere to be found. But Black lives don't matter to Black Lives Matter if those Black lives were lost defending their communities, their families, and their country. Black Lives Matter lionizes only those who seem to have been doing everything to destroy their communities, their families, and their country. Tell me that's not an accurate statement. This is because Black Lives Matter movement stated aims, and they said so in their own literature and on their website, is the dismantling of the Western society, the eradication of capitalism, which is really, really bizarre and hypocritical because the original founders of Black Lives Matter, most of them bought mansions. I believe one of them in Canada, several in the United States. Watch Candace Owens' The Greatest Lie Ever Told concerning Black Lives Matter, the $90 million they raised in 1 year. Eradication of capitalism, they sure cashed in. And the destruction of the nuclear family. To this end, the movement opposes any social or cultural reforms that would actually rehabilitate downtrodden Black communities. It is in their interest to keep Black America poor, angry, and hopeless. Activists in the Black community can continue peddling the known falsehoods of their naked emperors. In other words, the old story, the emperor has no clothes. Or they could support the idea that all Black lives matter, but you can't do both. That was one of the most well-written opinion pieces on this subject that I have ever seen. Anybody with a reasonable explanation besides just name calling can show anything this gentleman put in here that's irrefutable, that you can take exception to. It's unbelievable. And the media allies are the ones that were the fuel on the fire. And cities burned throughout 2020 because of this. It's amazing to me. And now it's at a Chicago suburb. Their school board unanimously decided that the contract that the Chicago police have guarding that school, when it runs out, they're not going to replace the police. So let's announce, from now on, every school in this district won't have any armed police protecting it. What a good idea. These people are nuts. But the fact of the matter is the vast majority of people, the ones that gave the $90 million plus 1 year to Black Lives Matter, really are decent people. The vast majority, from what I understand from reading articles, if not half or more, are white young people that really and truly thought that they were doing the right thing to help their country and minorities. And they were conned. But now you people know what happened. Should you be pissed off that you were taken advantage of? You betcha. But what are you going to do about it now? What are you going to do about now the fact that the narratives you were told throughout high school, all of college, was total, unadulterated bullshit? And now major corporations that you work for are touting the same equity and DEI woke theology. It's insane. How many times do you have to have your hand burned before you stop putting it on the stove? But anyway, this is a very well-written piece, and I'm sure this website will not appreciate it. We're going to see how they handle it. Until the next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.